So the first thing we're going to cover is objectives for the class, right? I want to make sure you understand what we're going to be covering so you can keep your eyes open for it. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about the characteristics of excellent customer service. Then we're going to talk about internal and external customers. This is a point that many people often overlook, and it's an important one that we'll spend some time on. And then we're going to talk about effective communications, what those primary characteristics are. We're going to deconstruct the communication process. So this is getting fairly technical, but it will help you really start to understand really how to get to effective communications in the customer service realm. And then we're going to end this unit with taking an inventory for your personal communication style. This is also something that is, and this will be personal. We'll talk a little bit about it as a group, but not pulling anybody out individually. And it'll actually be a good resource for you for lots of reasons. So the first conversation we're going to have, and this you're going to want to unmute because I'm going to ask you some questions. You can certainly type your answers in chat, but this works a little bit better if we actually have some dialogue. So you don't need to turn on your video, but if you can unmute when you're ready to just jump in. And if we end up having more than one person trying to talk, I'll just call on names. So the first question we want to explore is, what exactly is customer service? Now, for those of you who have the book, there is a definition on page 2, and this is from Wikipedia. It's basically a series of activities designed to enhance the level of customer satisfaction, right? So it's that feeling that a product or service has met the customer's expectations. The challenge is, how do you meet someone's expectations? All of us are different, right? So what are some of the things that you think affect someone's perception of a successful customer service interaction? Anybody have a thought? For you personally, think of yourself as a customer. What makes you think that that interaction was successful?
I would say tone and body language.
Oh, nice. Very good. Can you give me an example of what would be good and what would be bad?
So I guess calm speaking, like at the end of the conversation, would
Yeah,
be a good sign. You
yeah.
know, obviously not shouting at each other.
Right. Hopefully you've not experienced too much of the shouting. Anybody else? Thoughts on customer service? What does that mean to you? What does that look like?
Well, when the problem resolved in a timely manner.
That's great. Yeah. We're all very busy, right? Customers don't want to have to wait 2 hours for a problem to be fixed, or 4, or a day, or a week. Right. So does the type of interaction, do you think, have anything to do with whether or not someone is satisfied? So for example, is there a difference between someone calling you about their water bill because they're confused, and someone calling you because their water is discolored, and someone calling you because there's water flooding the street? Is there a difference in those kinds of interactions, do you think, that modify their expectations?
Yes.
Yeah, tell me more.
I would say yes, just because one, the discoloration is more of an urgency to them immediately versus a bill that can be something you can talk it through and explain it. Maybe it's just something they're not understanding. It just depends on how urgent the situation and how it affects them at that immediate moment.
Yeah, that's great. So in those situations, and Deborah, you can answer this or anybody else can jump in those kinds of situations, how is there something that a customer service person or anybody, a water professional, let's just use that term, is there something a water professional can do to adapt to the concern of that guest depending on why they've called? I imagine some of you that deal with customer calls all the time, you're dealing with all of these in one single day, right? You may get on the phone and have a conversation about a bill, and then the next call is about discoloration, and then the next call is about a water main break. How do you adapt? Any tips for anyone?
Well, you have to be able to go with the flow and I've learned that, you know, you don't take anything personal. I mean, because everybody flies off the handle on something, but they normally, after, you know, you're in a calm tone and you go over it with them, they, you know, they're actually very gracious and they apologize. I'm not really mad at you. I don't know what to do, you know, but you just have to, basically, they just want you to listen and give them some kind of advice so that they feel like you're really paying attention to their needs.
Great, great. That's really nice. Anybody else have thoughts?
I think what I have encountered is sometimes when they are having an issue with just because of water, if you can uh, explain to them why they're having the issue slowly and clearly, that seems to help, even though they are having a serious issues
Sure.
with their water. If you just take your time and explain to them why they're having this issue, and what's going to be involved in trying to resolve it, they seem to be okay with that.
Yeah.
If you just clear about the reason why,
Right.
and they seem to be, you're like, okay, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Some people really just want the information, right? They just want to be in the know and then they can manage their own emotions. Others are not quite so reasonable, and we'll talk a little bit about some skills to deal with the ones who aren't quite ready to be reasonable, right? For those of you who have the book, there is a consider this box on the bottom of page 2. It really just talks about water professionals saying the right things, and they transact business with efficiency. But if there's an air of indifference, like someone doesn't care, that can really exacerbate the problem on the phone. It could start out a really small problem, and if the caller doesn't feel like they're being heard, it can become a really big problem, right? Then all of a sudden, these little things that weren't really bothering them now are really bothering them. So being mindful of your tone, I think, was the very first response. I think that's important. So let's look at what do we call this? The concept of customer service. This is actually, oh, we might have no, oh yeah, we do have a poll coming up. So there's this idea that customer service is an attitude, not just a department. Does anyone want to comment on that? Any thoughts on that? Does it sound like malarkey? Does it sound like your workplace? What do you think?
I would agree with that. For my department, my staff we always are focused on wanting to provide, the best customer service. We feel like always going above and beyond. And so we often, there's like a level of pride that I think our staff takes in being able to provide good customer service, and even helping with other departments that aren't even our department. It's just kind of our standard. Everyone has a certain level of pride. The fact that we will help someone, we won't just pass someone off. We won't, if we know an answer, even if it's for another department, we try to provide it. Even if they've called the wrong community, we don't just say, oh, call the other place. We'll look, Google search the right number to give them, so they know the number to call. It's always that little bit of just being as helpful as possible, because, everyone who's coming in is just another person, and we treat people how we want to be treated.
That's great. Katie, you have set us up nicely for the concept we're going to cover in just a minute. I'm going to go on to our poll. We'll see how well this works. Part of this is my setup here, so bear with me while I navigate different things. And so there we are. So I am going to put a poll on your screen. If you would take a moment to answer this question: what does a water utility offer? Now you can select as many of the right answers in your perspective as you'd like. I'll give you just a few moments to opt in to those. And this is, keep in mind, all the way throughout today, this is not, we're not going to be judging anyone on whether or not their utility does A, B, or C. This is all just building awareness and helping you identify skills and strategies that can make customer service a better experience for everyone, right? So no right or wrong answers. Well, there's a couple wrong answers. All right, got a couple more people to respond and then I'll share the results. And these results don't show, they show me on the back end who replied, but when I share it with you guys, it doesn't show who answered what. So, all right, looks like we're missing a couple people, but I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll. And we're gonna show that to you. So 100% of you say water and customer service, which is great. Some of you have wastewater service, so that's great. Stormwater service as well. Connection to assistance with resources. This is kind of a mixed bag, so I'm pleased that it's 91%. That's fabulous. I'm curious if anyone is willing to share what the other is, whoever answered that. If you're not, that's okay, but if you shared other, I'd love to hear that.
We do tours for like elementary schools. At our facility.
Nice. Yeah. So building the public trust, educating the youth. I love that. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you for that. Okay, so let's move on to the customer service concept. So what you see on your screen is a diagram that really talks about, and this is sort of a product concept, but we're talking specifically about customer service as our product. So this concept is really begins in the middle, where it's either water or customer service, right? That is your product. And that's really, that it just is. It is what it is, right? Then the next level as you go out is really talking about what's expected. Everybody expects to go to their tap, turn on their tap, and have water come out, have clean water come out, right? Needs to be potable. They don't even think about it. It's just turn the tap on, water comes out, they go about their day. The next one is going a little bit beyond that. So you do a little more. So let's say, and some of this is, again, goes back to managing expectations, right? So they expect that their water is clean and accessible. Maybe what they don't expect is how amazing it tastes, right? And that's, even though we all strive to not only meet regulations, but we strive to make our water palatable, right? Maybe that's something that is just not expected for some. Or maybe when they call about their bill, they called the wrong place and they get a phone number. They're amazed that that is, wow, thank you, that was really helpful. And then the final is, wow, that you really knocked their socks off. They couldn't believe that you worked so hard for their problem. And this may be as little as a water bill, right? And referring them to an assistance program or even helping them fill out an application. Or it could be a water main break and, you know, super stressed mom calls and she's got to take a shower. She's got to drop the kids off at daycare. She can't take a shower. What's she going to do? And somehow you're able to address her fears and her need in a way that just completely blows her away. That's sort of the concept of exceptional customer service. So as we talk about these, think a little bit about what are some of the unexpected or astonishing things that we could do that would really wow someone. And I've given you an example, Katie's given an example. You can even turn this around. What would you want? What would wow you? So as an example, I recently had a equipment failure with my internet, or not internet provider, my cable provider. And when I called, it was coincidentally, it was as I was getting ready for this class. So it was, I don't know, last Thursday or something. And it took her 2 hours to talk me through a problem. And I had given up long before, but I had also resigned myself to the fact that I had to fix this problem. And so I literally walked from box to box, because we have 3 boxes, trying to figure out, do all the things that she asked me to do. And I was pretty irritated by the end. And toward the end, she was clearly giving up because I think she had reached her capacity for whatever she could do. Like she was beyond herself. And I said, you know, I really liked the days when you just sent a guy out so I didn't have to do this myself. And she said, okay, let's send a guy out and I'm not going to charge you for the new equipment and I'm not going to charge you for the call. Okay, you won me back after 2 hours of pain. You really, and it just was that simple. It would have been nice if I had not lost 2 hours of my life, but at least she found something that was in her power to give, right? Because sometimes it's not in our power to wow them. But let me stop and open it up to the class. What are some unexpected things or some astonishing things that you could do when you're serving your customers or that you've experienced as a customer? Who would like to go?
I'll jump in.
Okay.
One thing that I think customers are always kind of maybe skeptical of is follow-up. So often we are, you be on the phone with somebody and, oh, I'll pass along your number, someone will call you back, or I'll look into this, I'll get back to you. I think there's always kind of a little level of skepticism there that, is anyone going to call me back,
Right.
So if you can follow through with that, if the follow-up is frequent and, quick, and there's that, continued frequent communication as you resolve the issue,
Right.
I think that always ends up making them feel, oh, wow, because
Right.
I think everyone kind of expects that when they leave their phone number with someone, it might just get lost in the mix,
Right. Just, yeah, it disappears as soon as you hang up the phone.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great point. Anybody else? How about someone in field services? When you guys are doing inspections or samples, what's something you might be able to do that really wows someone?
So I was gonna say one thing that's unexpected that could happen though. Some of the customers, since we go out to these places a lot to take samples,
Yeah.
they might feel a little uneasy about why we're out there so much. But once you really get down, and explain what we do and the importance of it, kind of eases them up a bit. And I would say like that makes them feel more comfortable.
Yeah, that's a good point. And really, you have the opportunity to show how much they're important in not only providing you with data, but ensuring their own safety. That's a really good point. I love, do you guys have the opportunity to go to the same houses? So like Kevin, you would go to the same house month after month, or is that not necessarily the case?
So we do businesses.
Okay.
We really only go to people's homes for customer complaints.
Okay.
Just the business people that working in the businesses are the ones we usually have to speak to the majority of the time.
Yeah. And do
Um,
you have an opportunity to go to the same business over and over, or do you guys just cycle through whoever?
so the communities that we service, they give us a list of places that we
Okay.
can go to. So
Got
we do usually hit a lot of places, a few times a month.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So hopefully they can build a relationship with the utility that way. That's nice. Somebody else?
Yeah, now I'm curious if any of these investigators are any of ours that come to do any of you come to Bloomfield Township?
Yes, we do.
Oh,
Nice.
okay.
Nice.
Everywhere Great Lakes Water supplies water to. We've
Okay.
probably seen us.
Yeah, I know you guys come into our motor pool each month
Oh, sure.
to take our samples.
Good. Let's see. Who haven't we heard from? Kay Lang. What's your first name? Someone joined as Kay Lang. Can you unmute and tell us who you are? Maybe not. All right. Okay, we'll move on. That's great. For those of you who are quiet, I'm going to call on you, so be prepared, okay? Fair warning. So let's look at this concept of internal and external customers. Really the obvious one is the external customer, right? So they're the people or the businesses who take the water and ideally pay for it. That's sort of the goal. And they exist outside the confines of our water utility, our supply. Internal customers we often forget about. That's really anybody that is looking for something from us, right? So it could be supplies and materials. It could be that they need information from us. It could be that they need instruction. Maybe they're not sure what's going on and they need to know how to handle a particular situation. Could just be that you're supposed to be working collaboratively, and so you need participation from another department. It could be that you need assistance, that there's overflow and you need to tap other resources to get the work done. So as you think about internal customers, think about who you need to get information or resources from and those interactions. And we're going to take just a moment to identify some. I don't know if I have the questions listed. I don't think I do. Okay, hang on just one second. Let me get caught up here. All right. So here's what I'd like you to do with a piece of paper and a pencil, and be ready to do this. I'm actually going to break you guys into, let me stop sharing for just a second because I want to make sure I can see you. Has everyone experienced Zoom rooms before? If you have not, raise your hand. Okay, so let me explain what's going to happen. I'm going to put everybody in a Zoom room through, so let's see, we've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 13 people. So you're going to go into 3 different rooms, groups of 4 or so. And in that group, I'd like you to talk about 3 different questions. If you have the course material, we're looking at the questions on page 5. For those of you who don't have the questions, here are the questions. The first one is, who are your internal customers? So in your role in your company, who are your customers? So for example, for me as an executive director, my customers, again, we're a very small organization. We only have 6 people. My internal customers are the staff, are the board, because I report to the board of directors, and perhaps even my vendors, those vendors that provide services to us, right? So even though I'm their customer, they're to a certain extent my customer, especially if they're partners. We also have partner organizations. So for example, Bay College is one of my customers. So that's who I would envision as internal customers. That's question 1. Question 2, who do you interact with internally that provides you service? So who are you the customer for internally? And how do you think they can provide better service to you? That's a combined question. So question 2 is, who do you interact with that provides service to you? And how can they do that better? And then the final question that you're going to talk about in your group is, why is providing good customer service even a thing? Why are we even talking about this? Why do we care about good customer service? So once again, the first question, who are your internal customers? The second question, who provides you service internally and what can they do to make that better? And then why is good customer service important? Now with those 3 questions, I'm gonna give you about 15 minutes in your Zoom rooms. What's gonna happen is I'm gonna ask the system to send you into rooms. You don't need to do anything. You're going to be pushed into a room. Basically, you'll see on your screen, very similar to when you join Zoom initially, it's going to push you into another place. It looks exactly like this. You're going to get 3 other people that join you. You're going to have 15 minutes to have a conversation about those 3 questions. One of you needs to be the recorder, right? So all of you should speak, but one of you records the answers, and then we're going to come back and hear from all the groups what your answers were. So let's hear from Jack and Karina, and then we'll talk through as a group the questions. So Jack, would you go first?
Sure.
Thanks.
We ended up rolling the first 2 questions together and just kind of talking about who we interface with inside of our companies. And we kind of reasoned it's going to depend on kind of the size of your utility, kind of the scope of how many different people you're going to be working with, how many different departments.
Okay.
You know, we're a big municipality. We've got a wastewater plant, a power plant, a water plant. We're all trying to stay on the same page. Obviously, if you're just a smaller laboratory, then maybe you've just got a smaller slice of people to work with. Typically, every company we reason is going to have like a board of trustees too,
Mhm.
people who are going to be above you that you're going to be working with, and these are most of the people that we're going to be interacting with on the inside. And then, as we hasten to get to question number 3, we reasoned that why do we care about these kind of interactions that we have with people that we were working with or working for inside of our companies. And we think obviously we want to facilitate good working relationships with our own colleagues, because we're working with these people every day. It's nice to be on a good friendly note with them. But then another good note that was brought up was we want to encourage people to call for not necessarily any reason, but you don't want to be standoffish in your calls, and you're working with people. You want them to be free to approach you and free to bring up maybe smaller concerns that a harsher interaction they would have just decided not to bother you with. Just trying to really keep the doors open.
Good. Nice discussion. Good job for being cut short. Karina, what did your group come up with?
So for number 1, our internal, for me, it would be other departments that we have to work together with like for water projects or anything like that. So any department that has a hand in it, we have to work internally with them.
Okay.
For my other teammates, they said municipalities are from Great Lakes Water Authority. So other municipalities that they're internal customers, because they come in and work well with them. Were we doing outside customers?
No, but you can share if you'd like.
Well, outside customers would just be residents and like other communities.
Right.
So who we interact with internally, for GLWA, they said certain people, depending on what level you were at, you would deal with the investigators, you would deal with corporate. I deal with inspectors and city council. And then number 3 kind of got cut short, but it was pretty much so that you can build a team, good working relationships, and trust.
Excellent. So it sounds like there were a lot of similarities between Jack's group and Karina's group. For those of you who were with Deshay, so Deshay, I'm going to pick on you a little bit. Since you were in Deshay's group, what would you add to this discussion? So I know you guys didn't have a chance to talk as a group, but if each of you could share what your impressions of the internal customer is, or even an experience you've had in, or maybe how an internal, as a customer yourself, how your internal providers could offer better customer service to you. Deshay, you want to start us off? It's tough, isn't it, without having that 15 minutes?
I mean, I haven't. My biggest question I always get, like doing my routes, is, which is kind of, it's funny as in corny, but it's not really funny because it actually happened, is, oh, I hope we don't have Flint water. And I'm like, no, we don't have that. We don't have that. And they ask a lot of questions because they're wondering, like, why are we taking samples so many times, stuff like that. So, well, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's construction going on. It's new pipes getting put in. People are getting new, like, businesses going on. We have to check the water because the water does not stop.
Right, right.
So I have to let them know that, feel comfortable that just because we come out here every day or like do something every day is not, nothing's wrong with the water. It's just us to make sure every day that it's reaching the right chlorine, the pH and everything is okay.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel
so
like
I guess,
you get what you need from those you work with?
oh yes, they're really cool people and help out a lot whenever I need them.
Okay. So it sounds like you're already getting good customer service internally.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who else was in Deshay's group that I can pick on? Admit it, or I'll make Deshay point you out.
I'm just
Shay
gonna
was
pop on the
actually in our
screen,
group.
like here.
Katie, was it you?
No, I was gonna say
Okay.
Deshay was actually in our group with Jack.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, gosh, you guys did a great job. So who was my third group? Oh,
It was
slacker. Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
us, me, Joel, Victor. He stepped out. He said he was resetting his Wi-Fi and
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
And yeah, it's pretty much all the same. We all do the same thing. So we're, our internal would be, our water techs. So we're pretty much testing out in the field what they're sending out from the plants.
Okay.
So if we had any issue there, then they would supply us with what we need. Or besides that, it would be our team leaders.
Okay.
So that would be our internals.
Great. And do you feel like, for you being the customer, does your team leader give you what you need in terms of good service?
Yes. Anything I wouldn't know, they would know.
Okay, great. So one of the things that usually comes up in this exercise is this disconnect between, if you're big enough to have a call center or maybe the billing center, this disconnect between those who take those customer service calls and field staff, right? And there are actually some role-playing things we're going to do later today that are specific around this and around service recovery. But it's interesting because there have been a couple of communities that I've had in these classes that really struggle as an internal customer getting good information from other departments. There's just this huge, almost a wall, and it's very difficult to get information from other departments. So we talk a lot about, and we'll talk about this later today, but we talk a lot about reciprocation. So if you want good service from your internal providers, you also have to be a good provider of service. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Any other thoughts on these questions before we move on? How painful was the breakout room? Not so bad? Okay.
Not painful, it was quick.
You guys, yeah, it was really quick. You guys are actually easy. Usually when I have engineers in here, they just squirm when I tell them they have to go into group work. It's kind of funny. All right, let's get back to screen share. And, oh, can't do it that way. That doesn't work. Hang on. There we go. All right, so we're going to go back to this. Now we've already done our group exercise, so now we're going to talk a little bit about this idea of customer service representative. This is actually one of the shortcomings of the book that I'm not particularly fond of. So I'm going to touch on this very quickly, but understand the concept really is about any water professional, right? So in the book and in most customer service settings, there's this idea that you have a customer service representative, or CSR is the abbreviation. And the idea is that this individual's sole purpose is to address the needs of others, right? This is why large utilities have call centers, those kinds of things. But we've already talked about, and you guys have already acknowledged, that customer service is an integral part of running a water utility or a public works department. So we won't belabor this point too much. One of the things I do want to spend some time on, though, is the idea of skill sets for anyone who's going to be in a service role. And so I want to share this with you. On your screen, you see the results of a research study. Now, this study was, it is quite old now, but it still holds up. I have not seen the updated version. I imagine it's pretty, mirrors this pretty closely, if not higher. In this survey, employers were asked to rate the importance of skills for particular job candidates that are going to be in customer service on a 5-point scale, so 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. And a person's ability to communicate verbally, both inside and outside the organization, was rated the highest skill. Very closely associated was working in a team structure and being able to make decisions and solve problems. These are all skill sets that help you as someone providing service. Doesn't matter what your primary role is, whether you're a chemist or an administrative assistant or running the department. These are skills you need in order to achieve that wow factor in customer service. One of the questions that that we didn't get to in the exercise that I do want to pose to you and see if anybody has a response. Why is good customer service? I think Jack actually answered this. Why is good customer service important? Anybody? Let's see, who haven't I heard from?
I think good customer service is important because depending on what type of job you do, people are always like, depending on what you're doing, especially if you're working out in the public, people are always looking at like what the heck's going on, like, you know,
Right.
what is they doing, like what are they fixing, everything like that. Because at the end of the day, we all technically have to use the exact same things, like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So he's trying to basically just get a peace of mind to people to let them know, like, oh no, we're just fixing the problem. We're not adding anything on or doing anything crazy. We're just fixing the problem. And so when they hear like more details about what you're doing, they're like, oh, okay, well then have a good day, you know, carry on, you know.
Yeah, yeah, we're all people, right? We're all water
Yeah.
customers at some point, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at this concept that we talked a little bit about earlier, this idea of attitude. This is a quote from Lou Holtz. For those of you who are sports fanatics, you'll be familiar with him. The ability is what you're capable of doing. Motivation determines what you do, but attitude determines how well you do it. Think about that for just a second. Can you think of a time where, or even an activity that you do on a regular basis, whether it's customer service or something else, where this shows true for you? So I'll give you an example, and this is, I probably shouldn't be proud of this, but it's the reality. I recently started this health kick, and I am more active today than I was 2 months ago, but still not very active. And I've always known I had the ability to do it, right? I wasn't very motivated before because I don't really enjoy working out. Now I'm motivated for other reasons, right? It's part of my health that I'm trying to improve my health. But I realized that when I go into it with dread, I literally drag myself through the process. And when I go through it, when I go through the exercises with a good attitude, really even faking myself out as if I enjoy it, it's better. I perform better, I feel better, I have more energy. It's just better across the board. Forgive me for looking away from you for a moment. I'm trying to find my mouse so I can admit this person. There we go. Anybody else have an example? When has this played true for you?
I'd say just all around, just going out to take the different samples. If you know start off your day right, or like you're able to go into the businesses that you need to get into, you know, just depending on how we start our routes affects your whole day. So if I go to my first stop of the day and like they're closed or I can't get in for whatever reason or the customer turns me away, it's kind of gets iffy down the road.
Right. Has anybody heard the idea that if you smile, you actually improve your mood? Has anybody heard that before? So there's actually research, I think it's from the American Psychology Association, but I'm not sure, that actually shows that if you smile, it actually releases the chemicals in your brain that actually make you happy. So even if you're unhappy, whether it's sad or frustrated, bad mood, whatever, smiling actually does physiologically change your body so that you're in a better mood. So attitude just makes it a little easier to perform, right? Any other examples that hold true for you? Okay. Welcome, Cam. Thank you for turning on your camera. I'll be periodically calling on folks, but we'll give you a moment to get acclimated, okay?
Yeah, sorry about that. I had computer issues.
No worries. Yeah, technology is a mixed blessing, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about communication skills. We've mentioned that communication skills are key. A lot of you have already shared really good practices that you have with approaching customers, and external and internal. This quote here is interesting. It's not so much the content of what one says, but the way in which one says it. No matter how important the thing you say is, what's the good of it if it's not heard, or once heard, it's not felt? Does that make sense? Right? So really it comes down to, and I can't remember who mentioned this early on in our conversation, but it comes down to tone, right? Do I feel like you're sincere when you tell me you really want to help me even though you can't? That makes all the difference if I feel like you are being truthful, right? Any other thoughts on this quote? Okay, let's get into the characteristics of effective communication. So if you have materials with you, and for those of you who don't have your book, they're coming, I promise. I apologize for the order not being processed quickly enough. If you don't already have them, they're probably being delivered today. So anyway, let's go through characteristics of effective communication. We're looking at page 9 if you have the book. So this will be available to you after, after we finish the class. So you're all familiar with these, but let's break these down. So verbal communication, clearly that's what we're doing this morning, right? And a lot of why people struggle with verbal communication is they just can't find the words that they're trying to figure out how to say what they want to say. But this is really what most of us think of when we think of communications. The next one is nonverbal. Nonverbal actually accounts for much more than verbal does. So part of the reason why I have a lot of you sharing your camera today is so that we can see each other, so that you can see each other's facial expressions. If we get into conversations that are a little uncomfortable, this helps sort of break down the barriers. There's a less likelihood of miscommunication if we can see each other's expressions in facial and body language. And you can see by the picture there, he doesn't really look like he wants to listen to you, does he? So that's a pretty extreme example of nonverbal communication. And then of course you have written communication. We do this a lot through our water bills, bill stuffers, door hangers, the water quality report, those kinds of things. And then visual really usually is signs, being able to assess your environment, those kinds of things. So all 4 of those components make up effective communication. Some of those things we have control over. Some of those things we have no control over. And we'll talk about the different methods of communication in terms of whether you're on the phone or in person or on a Zoom call or in person, right? Like actually at someone's home. So we'll get into those details. Any comments on the 4 characteristics of effective communication? Okay. So this is, I mentioned before that we're going to be getting into mechanics. This will become clear why this is relevant here in just a moment. Let's talk about the process of getting a message across. So the whole concept here in the process of communicating is really about the various components. And this is sort of breaking communications down into its most basic elements, right? And so you have a sender of a message. So let's say I'm trying to communicate, I'm trying to impart on you some information that you could use later. So I'm the sender, right? Then I have a message that I want to get across. And that could be in English, in plain English. It could be in jargon. I could decide to switch over to Latin, right? It could be any number of things. There is the receiver. In this case, you guys are the receiver, and you need to be ready to be receptive. You need to be ready to hear the message. And then also, and this is a piece that most people forget, is there has to be feedback. In order for communication to actually have happened, it's not just me talking to you, it's you confirming with me that you've heard me, right? And that's an important element in effective communications that often we forget. It's one of the things that in a training class, when you're in what's called a talking heads class, the person stands up and points at the PowerPoint presentation and imparts all this wisdom on you. But that person has no idea whether or not you've heard them, because you may or may not have been paying attention. You may or may not have been thinking about whether or not you left the coffee pot on. You may or may not be thinking about your 15 goals and deadlines that you have to do before the end of the day. So that's not really communication when you have that one person delivering what they want to say. You've got to have the receiver hearing it and ready to give feedback. That is communication. So really, to sum all that up, effective communication is when the sent message was successfully received and the receiver provides the sender with the desired feedback. Now, desired feedback is subjective, I'll give you that, but you definitely need feedback. And we're going to actually deconstruct this a little bit more, because it's important to have the right strategies for the feedback. It's also important to understand that there are a lot of things that can get in the way of that receiver getting your message. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Now, I'm going to pull up a poll, and let's get this on the screen real quick. There we go. Now, again, when I share the results of this poll, this is not going to show anybody that, Bonifer is, she tries to communicate, but she falls short. This is really just for us to get a sense of the skill set in the class. I could take a guess as to where you guys are going to end up, but choose the one that best describes where you think you are on this continuum in terms of whether or not you are an effective communicator, given the process that we've just talked about. So I'll give you just a few more seconds to answer, and then we'll go ahead and talk about the poll. Almost there, got 3 more people to participate. So we'll give you just a sec. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll. And this is about what I expected based on our conversation already today. Most of you sound like you have enough experience and enough skill that you are probably pretty effective at communication. For those of you who responded, it looks like just one person responded, I try, but I fall short. I would actually put myself in that category. And here's why. You'll find today I'm going to be telling stories about myself just as an example, and to encourage you to do the same, or at least to reflect on your own situation. I have one employee that is, I have a wonderful team, let's just put that out there. But I have one employee that is, that just speaks a different language than I do. We can send emails together or back and forth. We can be talking face to face. And it usually takes, and we've worked together for a number of years now, but it usually takes us a couple of times before we actually are on the same page. And I take some responsibility for that, right? Communication is a two-way street. You've got to have a sender and a receiver, but we each see the environment and what we're dealing with through our own lens, and we still do not, we just are not speaking each other's language. So it takes a lot of work for us to communicate. Anybody else think of a time when maybe you weren't as effective as you wanted to be, and anything you want to share about what you've learned about those situations? It's okay if you don't. This one's a little personal.
I have an employee that maybe kind of a similar situation that you shared. Just that there's more than one way to get to the right answer. And so when we're problem solving, we're just both aware that our brains work differently, me and her. And, we both are saying, like, we're getting to the same answer, but we both got there in different ways. And I'm just well aware of that now, that every time we talk, it usually needs to be verbal, and we need to kind of walk through step by step, because we're both getting there, but we're getting there on two different paths. And so that always comes into play when me and her are problem solving together.
That's great. Thank you, Katie. We're going to actually talk about this concept of getting at the right solution or the same solution from completely different ways. That can be really uncomfortable and can be a huge barrier to effective communication, but it's really important in a very diverse workforce. So we'll talk a little bit more about that.
But if
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
could interrupt,
Yeah.
I think the thing that you touched upon a couple of pages back was the feedback. And I find out when I'm having a conversation with somebody, their expressions sometimes let me know that what I'm saying may not be totally clear to them. And so then, based just on their expression, I don't let the conversation in. I try to take it to attack it from a different angle.
Yeah.
And to see if I'm getting through, because sometimes people don't say, I don't understand, it's not clear. So sometimes I'm trying to pay attention to their body to see whether or not, yeah, I was clear, yeah, and not also be depend on them giving me a verbal feedback as to whether or not they're understanding what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that's a great point, Madeline. I am a terrible poker player. So when any of my team bring me an idea that I'm resistant to, they see it on my face immediately. And them calling it out actually, and Stacy can attest to this, them calling that out really makes me pause and stop and, okay, help me understand what you're trying to say, because I'm not there yet. Help me get there, right? So facial expression is a huge component of effective communication. That's a really great point. Thank you, Madeline. Anybody else? Okay, so we're going to move on to the next exercise, but this is an individual exercise. So we're not going to toss you into Zoom rooms. I'm actually going to stop sharing because I want to ask you a question, and I didn't put this in poll, so I need to see my screen. Who has the book? Can everybody tell me if any has? Okay, Katie, Cam, Kevin. Okay, Decobie, Jake, great. So about half of you, it looks like. So we are on page, let's see, page 14. We're going to do the communications inventory questions. So for those of you with the book, you can go ahead and get started. Let me give you just some brief instructions. And then for those of you without the book, I'm going to take you through this inventory. So you definitely need something to write with and a piece of paper. So if you don't have one, go get one. For those of you who have the book, you're going to answer those questions. You can only choose one answer. Don't overthink it. You want to give yourself gut reaction. That's what you want to answer. When you're done answering the inventory, you're going to place all of the tick marks on page 15 and add up each column, okay? So you're going to answer the questions with gut reaction, no overthinking, add up the columns, we'll come back. If you want to wait and do it with the rest of us, that's fine, you can do that too. So for those of you without the book, what I'm going to do, this is an assessment that is just for you. So you're not going to share it with anyone, but it's important that you take it for the next piece that we're going to cover. And so there are 18 questions and there are 4 kinds of answers. So what I'd like you to do is create basically a table on a piece of paper with A, B, C, D across the top and 1 through 18 down the left-hand side. Okay, and so it's really going to look, I don't know if this will work, it's going to look like that, right? That, there we go. So that's what you're going for your answer. You're looking at that green box. A, B, C, D across the top and 1 through 18 down the left-hand side. And I'll give you just a second to do that. And what we're going to do is take this inventory we're going to do this communication inventory, and then we're going to take about a 15-minute break. So when you're done with the communications inventory, if you have your book, go ahead and you can step out, and we'll be back at probably 10:05. And for those of you who are doing it with me, let's get started. All right. So when I read you the question and the answers, all you need to do is make a tick mark in the column A, B, C, D for your answer. You could write the letter if you'd like, but because you're putting them in the column, that's going to make it easier to add up, okay? So when speaking to others, I would describe myself in one of the following ways. When speaking to others, I would describe myself in one of the following ways. A is getting to the point. B is talkative. C is telling just what others need to know. And D is going into many details. So one more time. When speaking to others, I would describe myself as A, getting to the point, B, talkative, C, telling just what others need to know, or D, going into many details. Okay, number 2, at times I would describe myself as possibly A, very direct, B, not forthcoming with information, C, very literal and strict in my interpretations, and D, quite subjective in my descriptions. Again, at times I would describe myself as possibly A, very direct, B, not forthcoming with information, C, very literal and strict in my interpretations, and D, quite subjective in my descriptions. Now I should say, and I don't recall if I said it before, there are no wrong answers in this. This is a personal communications inventory. It is going to describe your communication style. It's not making a judgment, okay? So really do take the answer that's a gut reaction. Number 3, most of the time I direct my communication so it is A, friendly and open, B, very precise, C, cooperative and flexible, or D, results and bottom line oriented. One more time. Most of the time, I direct my communication so it is A, friendly and open, B, very precise, C, cooperative and flexible, and D, results and bottom line oriented. Number 4, people sometimes tell me that I am A, not being firm enough, B, not paying attention, C, putting things off, or D, trying too hard to control the conversation. Again, people sometimes tell me that I am A, not being firm enough, B, not paying attention, C, putting things off, and D, trying too hard to control the conversation. Number 5, when I discuss things with people, they A, stick to the facts because that's what I need, B, understand I do not appreciate surprises, C, appreciate and know where I stand, or D, see that I am enthusiastic. Again, number 5, when I discuss things with people, they A, stick to the facts because they know that's what I need, B, understand I do not appreciate surprises, C, appreciate and know where I stand, or D, see that I am enthusiastic. Number 6, whether talking or listening, I like conversation to be A, upbeat, B, very rational, C, clear and straightforward, or D, low-key and calm. Again, whether talking or listening, I like conversation to be A, upbeat, B, very rational, C, clear and straightforward, or D, low-key and calm. Number 7, my favorite conversations are A, filled with stories and interesting drama, B, filled with optimism and hope, C, honest, or D, contained, limited, and focused. Again, my favorite conversations are A, filled with stories and interesting drama, B, filled with optimism and hope, C, honest, or D, contained, limited, and focused. Number 8, I do not care for conversations that A, are stressful, B, communicate conflict, C, reject my perspective, or D, are difficult for me to control. 8 again, I do not care for conversations that A, are stressful, B, communicate conflict, C, reject my perspective, or D, are difficult for me to control? Number 9, I am at my best when I, A, have the opportunity to listen to others, B, have specific points I can follow, C, can direct and give orders to others, or D, am able to be cool, calm, and collected. Again, I am at my best when I, A, have the opportunity to listen to others, B, have specific points I can follow, C, can direct and give orders to others, or D, am able to be cool, calm, and collected. 10, my main communication weakness is A, I want details, 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 B, reacting quickly, C, wanting a lot of personal attention, or D, speaking before I am really prepared. Again, my main communication weakness is A, I want details, 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 B, reacting quickly, C, wanting a lot of personal attention, and D, speaking before I am really prepared. 11, the people who work with me think of me as A, courteous and respectful, B, careful, C, open-minded, and D, honest and sincere. Again, the people who work with me think of me as A, courteous and respectful, B, careful, C, open-minded, D, honest and sincere. 12, my most important and biggest need is to A, be with others, B, adjust to changes over time, C, receive encouragement, or D, receive direction in a candid manner. Again, my most important and biggest need is to A, be with others, B, adjust to changes over time, C, receive encouragement, or D, receive direction in a candid manner. 13, the real purpose of communication is A, cooperation with people, B, obtaining power, C, the ability to persuade, and D, having control. Oops, gotta read it one more time. 13 again, the real purpose of communication is A, cooperation with people, B, obtaining power, C, the ability to persuade, or D, having control. Almost there, we got 5 more. Number 14, when I write documents, I usually A, am too brief, B, push an idea too hard, C, stick to the specification required, or D, issue lengthy messages. Again, when I write documents, I usually am A, am too brief, B, push an idea too hard, C, stick to the specification required, or D, issue lengthy messages. Number 15, I am able to work best in a place that A, is open and not too strict, B, has other people around, C, is fairly well structured, or D, is free of conflict. Again, I am able to work best in a place that A, is open and not too strict, B, has other people around, C, is fairly well structured, or D, is free of conflict. 16, I am motivated the most by conversations that A, offer me a problem or challenge to solve, B, provide me with answers and encouragement, C, are friendly and build relationships, or D, give me the recognition I need. Again, 16, I am motivated the most by conversations that A, offer me a problem or challenge to solve, B, provide me with answers and encouragement, C, are friendly and build relationships, and D, give me the recognition I need. Number 17, I tell those around me under stress to A, think about positive things, B, follow a list of actions I can provide, C, adapt and adjust, or D, keep their cool. Again, I tell those around me under stress to A, think about positive things, B, follow a list of actions I can provide, C, adapt and adjust, or D, keep their cool. And the last one, in talking to others, my strength is definitely A, that I am conscientious and dedicated, B, being extroverted and engaging with everyone, C, being clear and forthright about my actions, or D, my desire to listen. Again, in talking to others, my strength is definitely A, that I am conscientious and dedicated, B, being extroverted and engaging with everyone, C, being clear and forthright about my actions, or D, my desire to listen. All right, now that you have, that is the assessment, what you need to do is add up all your A's, B's, C's, and D's so that you get a total number of A's, total number of B's, total number of C's, and total number of D's. Obviously, your 4 sum should equal 18.